the forest breathes a chill, even in summer's high noon. It is a place of ancient shadows, where sunlight splinters and falls like forgotten coins. Listen closely. Beyond the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig under an unseen weight, there is sometimes a sound that prickles the skin, a cry that is not quite animal, not quite human. It is a lament, a threat, a promise of transformation. This creature, the werewolf, a whisper in the dark tapestry of human history, has stalked our collective nightmares for millennia, a phantom conjured from the deepest recesses of fear and fascination. From the blood-soaked altars of ancient Greece, where gods meted out terrible justice, and the frenzied battlefields of the Norse, where warriors donned the wolf's fury, to the grim courthouses of a Europe gripped by a terrifying certainty, and into the dispassionate gaze of modern science, its legend endures. Is the werewolf merely a figment, a shadow cast by superstition, a symptom of minds unhinged by disease or delusion? Or, buried deep beneath layers of myth and misinterpretation, does a kernel of unsettling truth, a shard of forgotten reality, await discovery in the mooncast shadows of our own nature? The fear is ancient, woven into our oldest stories. Long before Victorian parlours, before medieval inquisitors, the werewolf haunted the human imagination. A creature of divine wrath, primal power, the terrifying permeability between man and beast. Its origins echo from disparate corners of the ancient world, each culture shaping the monster to reflect its own anxieties, its understanding of the sacred, the profane, and the untamed. Our journey begins in Arcadia, rugged heartland of ancient Greece. Here ruled King Lycaon, his name from Lycos, wolf, a chilling prophecy. His piety, by all accounts, was thin. The air in his feasting hall must have grown heavy the day he chose to test Zeus. Ovid, in his Metamorphoses, recounts the horrific act. Zeus, disguised as a humble traveler, sought Lycaon's hospitality, a sacred trust. But Lycaon, heart knotted with pride, devised a monstrous test. A platter bearing not roasted meats, but cooked human flesh. Some say his own son, Nyctimus. Imagine the scene, the casual presentation of the forbidden, the king's watchful eyes, the dawning horror on the god's face. Zeus, enraged, overturned the table, an act so resonant it is said to have named the city of Trapezus. Lycaon's punishment was not a swift thunderbolt, but a terrible metamorphosis. As he fled, Ovid tells, his robes shredded into shaggy fur. His arms bent into forelegs, his voice fractured into a guttural howl. His innate desire for killing now turned upon sheep, still bloodthirsty. He became the first lycanthrope, a king reduced to a predator, forever caught between two states. This ancient terror finds an echo in Arcadia's soil. On Mount Lycaon, sacred to Zeus Lycaeus, archaeologists unearthed a massive ash altar, built over 1,000 years from tens of thousands of animal sacrifices. Within, a chilling find, the buried skeleton of a human adolescent from the late Mycenaean period. Not definitive proof, but the presence of human remains in a sacrificial altar on Zeus's Wolf Mountain lends tangible resonance to the ancient story, hinting at dark, forgotten rituals. The Lycaean myth establishes the werewolf as a symbol of profound moral and religious transgression, a consequence of defying divine order. The tale is more than horror, it's a tapestry of Greek anxieties. Lycaon's transformation was a sentence rich in symbolic meaning. At its heart, hubris, that overweening pride leading mortals to challenge gods. His attempt to deceive Zeus was profound impiety. Furthermore, he violated Xenia, the sacred code of hospitality, by offering human flesh, an unthinkable betrayal. The offering itself was a grotesque perversion of legitimate sacrifice, designed not to honor, but to mock. Pausanias's version, Lycaon sacrificing a child on Zeus's altar, underscores this corruption. Ultimately, his metamorphosis symbolized a descent from civilization into bestial savagery, from order to chaos, culture to raw nature. It was a cultural statement on the precariousness of civilization and the consequences of abandoning the principles defining humanity. As Lycaon's howl faded, a different man-wolf stirred in the colder north. Among Norse and Germanic peoples, the man-animal connection wasn't solely punishment, but a source of terrifying sacred power. The berserkers, bear-shirts, and Ulfhednar, wolf-hides, elite warriors fighting with an ecstatic fury, berserker-ganga. These were shamanic warriors who, through ritual and connection to their totem animal, tapped into primal rage. Donning the pelt was transformative. Snorri Sturluson wrote of Odin's men rushing into battle unarmored, mad as dogs or wolves, strong as bears or wild oxen. Neither fire nor iron told upon them. The Haraldskvedi poem speaks of King Harald Fairhair's Ulfhednar. Wolf-skinned they are called. In battle, they bear bloody shields. The berserker Ganga was terrifying, shivering, chattering teeth, then a swollen, discolored face exploding into consuming rage. They'd howl like beasts, gnaw shield rims, cut down everything, friend or foe, immune to pain. Afterwards, profound weakness. They existed in a liminal state, human and animal, civilized and wild. Often considered Odin's men, their battle fury, a gift from the Allfather, god of war, wisdom, poetry, ecstasy. Sagas tell of warriors like Kveldulf, Evening Wolf, a berserker said to transform into a wolf by night. The Norse tradition contrasts with Lycaon. Here, assuming animal traits was channeling primal power, a terrifying but necessary aspect of a warrior ethos. The wolf symbolized untamed strength, divine frenzy. The wolfman's shadow stretches further. In Eastern European forests, whispers tell of the Volkolak, often a being of misfortune, transformed by a witch's curse, a spell, or ill-omened birth. Magical pelts or enchanted doorways might trigger the change. The Volkolak had immense strength, its wounds in wolf form remaining on its human flesh. Yet it could be a tragic figure, human consciousness trapped, weeping within the beast, a victim of malevolent magic. This duality lends poignancy to Slavic werewolf narratives. Across the ocean, in the American Southwest, among the Navajo Diné people, dwells the Ye-Nald-Lushi, the skinwalker. Not accidental curse or divine whim, but profound, deliberate spiritual corruption. One chooses the witchery way, opposing Navajo principles of harmony, Hoju. To gain power, one commits the ultimate perversion of kinship, murdering a close family member. This grants the ability to transform not just into wolves, but various animals by wearing their skins. The skinwalker uses this for malevolence, inflicting sickness, misfortune, terror. Fear is palpable. The subject, taboo. They are antitheses of medicine people who heal. The skinwalker is a human who embraced darkest spiritual power, a figure of ultimate social and ethical breach. These diverse traditions demonstrate the werewolf archetype's global resonance, yet underscore how local cultures shape its terror. The animal form is a flexible symbol. For Lycaon, degradation. For Norse, Ulfhednar, channeled power. In Slavic lore, dark magic or curse. For the Navajo, a tool for malice. The method and moral implication reveal core societal concerns: Greek hubris, Norse martial fury, Slavic magical threats, Navajo kinship perversion. The monster is a negative imprint of cultural values. The horror lies not in the animal, but the transgressive crossing of the human-beast boundary and the dark energies compelling such passage. As antiquity's grand empires dissolved into memory, and Europe trod the shadowed path into the medieval and early modern eras, the werewolf underwent a chilling transformation in the collective mind. The old gods, with their intricate moralities, faded. Christianity rose, casting the world in a stark dualism of God versus Satan. The werewolf, once a creature of mythic retribution or primal energy, increasingly became the devil's pawn, a soul bartered for earthly power or bestial might, a terrifying sign of darkness in a world reeling from plague, war, and upheaval. This was no overnight shift, but a slow, insidious darkening. Pagan beliefs were not erased, but demonized. The wilderness, once home to nature spirits or Odin's wolf warriors, became Satan's domain, where demons lurked and witches convened. The werewolf, tied to the wild, was drawn into this sinister orbit, becoming a manifestation of demonic influence, a human who had sealed a pact with hell. Theologians and demonologists debated, could humans truly change form, or was it a demonic illusion? The Malleus Maleficarum, the hammer of witches, while focused on witchcraft, solidified an atmosphere of intense fear. Its lurid accounts of demonic pacts and malevolent magic created fertile ground for lycanthropy accusations to merge with witch hunts, lending terrifying legitimacy to belief in such compacts and the brutal punishment of those accused. This was not mere academic discourse, it had deadly consequences, turning the werewolf from folklore figure into a tangible enemy of God and society, hunted and purged by fire. The fear, codified, erupted. Across parts of Europe, particularly French and German regions, the 16th and 17th centuries saw the werewolf trials, a horrifying pattern of accusation, confession, and execution. No case better encapsulates this than Peter Stump, the werewolf of Bedburg. In 1589, Bedburg, near Cologne, was gripped by a terror said to have stalked it for 25 years. An insatiable bloodsucker, a contemporary English pamphlet described, preyed on livestock and humans. A local farmer named Stump confessed, while under torture on the rack, to assuming this monstrous form. He admitted to black magic since age 12, the devil gifting him a magical wolfskin girdle for transformation. He even told magistrates where to find it, but it was never recovered. The horrors he recounted under torture were beyond imagining. Slaughter and cannibalism of 14 children and 2 pregnant women, whose fetuses he claimed to have ripped out. One child was his own son, whose brains he consumed. His depravity allegedly extended to incest and congress with a succubus. Retribution was public, brutal. On October 31st, 1589, Stump's flesh was torn with red-hot pincers, limbs shattered on the breaking wheel, then beheaded, his body burned. His daughter Beale and mistress Catherine Trompen, accused as accomplices, were also executed. A pole was erected, displaying the torture wheel, a wolf figure, and Stump's severed head, a grisly warning. His legend, fueled by the graphic pamphlet, burned into werewolf lore. Decades earlier, in France, Gilles Garnier, the hermit of Saint-Bonneau, became the werewolf of Dole. Impoverished, reclusive, his life was one of hardship. When children vanished or were found murdered, authorities in Franche-Comté encouraged the populace to find the killer, the shadow of the loup-garou looming. Garnier's confession, also under torture, told of a spectre offering an ointment for wolf transformation to ease his hunt for food for his family. He confessed to stalking and murdering at least 4 children, aged 9 to 12, dragging a girl into a vineyard, strangling her, eating flesh from her thighs and arms in the Serre forest, even taking some home to his wife. Another boy was killed, parts consumed, a leg saved. Over 50 witnesses testified to seeing Garnier attack children, sometimes human, sometimes as a loup-garou. Found guilty of crimes of lycanthropy and witchcraft, Garnier was burned at the stake on January 18, 1574. His case highlights the nexus of poverty, marginalization, and supernatural accusation. These were not isolated events. In Poligny, France, 1521, Pierre Burgot and Michel Verdun confessed to a pact with a man in black, an ointment, Sabbaths, and child cannibalism. Jacques Roulet, the Werewolf of Angers, 1598, found wounded near a mutilated boy, confessed to using a salve. Yet in a rare deviation, Roulet was judged mentally ill and committed to an asylum. 13-year-old Jean Grenier, 1603, insisted he was a werewolf, gifted a wolf skin by the Lord of the Forest. Perplexed judges and physicians debated demonic marks versus melancholy. He was confined to a monastery, spared due to his age and perceived delusion. More sinister was the demon tailor of Chalon, 1598, accused of luring children to his shop for abuse and murder, then roaming as a wolf. The details were so appalling, court documents were destroyed. In Ansbach, Bavaria, 1685, a vicious wolf-killing livestock was believed to be the town's unpopular deceased mayor returned as a werewolf. When killed, its carcass was dressed in the mayor's clothes and hung from a gibbet, a bizarre communal vengeance. Across these trials, a chilling consistency. Pacts with dark figures, magical transformation items, Sabbaths, cannibalism of children. This standardization suggests less a cohesive werewolf cult and more the efficacy of shared cultural fear, amplified by demonology and brutal inquisitorial processes. The lurid confessions, however, cannot be divorced from their extraction. Almost invariably, they were wrung out under torture or its imminent threat. The rack, thumbscrew, strappado, these were tools to break wills and elicit conformity to a pre-existing demonic narrative. The consistency in confessions often mirrored inquisitors' leading questions, victims desperately seeking an end to pain. This persecution can be understood as mass hysteria, social contagion, where collective anxieties and instability coalesced into a hunt for scapegoats. Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries faced plague, famine, religious wars. The werewolf, embodying murder, cannibalism, sacrilege, became a vessel for fears and taboos. Purging these figures was a ritual of purification. The accused were often marginalized. Beggars, hermits, émigrés, the different. The scale of persecution, however, has been exaggerated. The claim of 30,000 werewolf executions in France, 1520 to 1630, has been debunked by historian Willem de Blécourt, who traced it to the writings of zealous judge Pierre de l'Ancre. De Blécourt suggests total European werewolf prosecutions numbered in the hundreds. This correction is vital, yet doesn't diminish the era's terror. Subtle fissures appeared in this edifice of belief. Cases like Roulet and Grenier, judged mentally ill or deluded, hint at emerging alternative interpretations. The Wolf of Ansbach, a community manufacturing a werewolf, shows the powerful need to give form to perceived evils. This interplay of belief, fear, judicial process, and dawning awareness of other explanations marks the werewolf trials as a profoundly unsettling chapter. The age of superstition was not monolithic. It held seeds of its own questioning, even as fires burned. As the embers of werewolf trials cooled and overt demonic explanations receded, new ways of understanding the inexplicable arose. The Enlightenment's emphasis on reason and empirical observation fostered a climate where naturalistic causes for seemingly supernatural phenomena could be explored. The werewolf, potent symbol of terror, didn't vanish. The lens viewing it shifted. The search for the beast outside gave way partly to a search for the wolf within, in the afflicted body or tormented mind. Even during the panics, dissenting voices were heard. Before modern medicine, some physicians sought explanations beyond diabolical pacts. In the 4th century, Alexandrian physician Oribasius attributed lycanthropy to melancholia, an excess of black bile causing despondency and delusion. Paul of Aegina, 7th century, echoed this, linking it to mania, brain disorders, epilepsy, or hallucinogens. In 1563, Johann Weyer, a courageous critic of witch hunts, argued that self-proclaimed werewolves suffered from melancholic humor imbalance, not demonic alliance. He noted their pallor, dry tongue, thirst, sunken eyes. King James VI of Scotland, in his 1597 Daemonology, while a believer in witchcraft, posited that excess of melancholy could cause some to believe they were wolves and counterfeit their actions, distinct from true demonic transformation. These early medical views, though framed by humoral theory, represented a crucial shift, locating the illness within the individual's constitution. This nascent medical gaze laid groundwork for later scientific hypotheses. Hypertrichosis, excessive hair growth, is one visually striking condition retrospectively linked to werewolf lore. The term werewolf syndrome is modern, but historical individuals with hypertrichosis presented a startling animal-like appearance. Petrus Gonsalvus, born in Tenerife in 1537, covered in thick hair, was brought to King Henry II of France's court at 10. Known as the Man of the Woods or the Canarian Werewolf, he was educated, married, and several children inherited his condition, becoming court curiosities. In the 19th and 20th centuries, individuals with hypertrichosis were often exhibited in circuses as ape men or wolf men. The visual impact is undeniable. However, the direct link to werewolf accusations during trials is tenuous. Many historical legends describe temporary transformation, with the individual appearing normal otherwise, unlike hypertrichosis's permanent hair growth. Still, such individuals provided a tangible example of how man-beast boundaries could appear to blur. Porphyria, a group of rare genetic disorders affecting heme production, has also been speculatively linked. Certain types cause extreme photosensitivity. Sunlight causes blistering, scarring, leading sufferers to avoid daylight. Repeated damage can cause disfigurement and increased facial hair. Some forms make teeth appear prominent, even fang-like, due to gum recession. Urine can turn reddish-purple. Acute attacks can involve abdominal pain, neurological issues, and psychiatric symptoms like anxiety, confusion, hallucinations, psychosis. In 1963, Dr. Lee Illis proposed a connection, arguing that congenital porphyria sufferers with photosensitivity, skin lesions, hair growth, reddish teeth, and psychosis could have been mistaken for werewolves. However, critics note mythological werewolves usually resembled true wolves, their human forms rarely described with porphyria's disfigurements. The most disfiguring forms are extremely rare, making it an unlikely sole explanation for a widespread belief. Rabies presents striking parallels, especially regarding ferocity and bite transmission. A viral disease of the central nervous system, it's almost always fatal once symptoms appear, typically transmitted by an infected animal's bite. Symptoms include anxiety, confusion, agitation, hallucinations, and aggressive behavior. Hydrophobia, fear of water-causing spasms, is classic. Foaming at the mouth and delirium also occur. The term lysa, from lysivirus, is Greek for rage. Historically, fear of rabid animals, especially wolves, was profound. A 1271 Franconian account tells of rabid wolves killing 30 humans. The idea of lycanthropy transmitted via bite strongly echoes rabies, However, the bite transmission trope for werewolves is largely a later fictional staple, not consistent in older folklore. As early as the 11th century, Avicenna distinguished rabies, caused by toxic saliva, from lycanthropy, kutrub, or mania lupina, which he saw as psychological, a form of melancholia. While rabies undoubtedly fueled fear of wolves, it wasn't necessarily seen as identical to being a werewolf. Environmental factors, like contaminated food, offer another avenue. Ergotism, poisoning from grains, especially rye, infected with Claviceps purpurea fungus, can have devastating effects. Gangrenous ergotism, St. Anthony's fire, causes intense burning, leading to gangrene and limb loss. Convulsive ergotism attacks the nervous system, inducing muscle spasms, seizures, contortions, and psychological disturbances like hallucinations, mania, delirium, psychosis. History records many outbreaks. A 1951 Pont-Saint-Esprit, France outbreak saw victims describing terrifying hallucinations, including being attacked by wild animals. Linda Caporal in 1976 linked ergotism to the Salem witch trials, arguing accusers' convulsive symptoms matched. Germanic folklore connects ergot rye with wolves. Roggenwolf, rye wolf. The werewolf sits amid the grain. Legends of the Roggenmutter, rye mother, tell of her suckling children on ergotamine-tainted nipples, making them wild. Conceivably, ergot-induced hallucinations and mania could have been interpreted as demonic possession or lycanthropic madness, especially if coinciding with increased wolf activity. The mind itself can conjure the werewolf. Clinical lycanthropy is a rare psychiatric syndrome where one delusionally believes they are transforming or have transformed into an animal, often a wolf. This isn't physical metamorphosis, but a profound conviction, often accompanied by animalistic behaviors. Howling, growling, crawling, desiring raw meat. Historical accounts suggest such delusions. Oribasius and Paul of Aegina linked it to melancholia or mania. A 19th century French asylum report described a patient insisting he was a wolf, showing teeth, complaining of cloven feet and hairy body, not objectively present, demanding raw meat. Modern psychiatry views it as an expression of underlying psychotic disorders: schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, psychotic depression. Neuroimaging even shows unusual activation in brain areas of self-perception in some patients. Clinical lycanthropy shows the belief in transformation is a real psychological phenomenon. It's plausible some accused historically suffered this delusion, their howls echoes of a mind convinced of its own monstrous metamorphosis. While these conditions offer potential explanations for aspects of the werewolf legend, historian Willem de Blécourt cautions against anachronistically applying modern diagnoses to historical accounts. Many scientific explanations are based on selective readings or influenced by 20th century cinema tropes rather than primary historical sources. The bite transmission for werewolves, for example, is largely cinematic. The progression from melancholia to specific syndromes like porphyria or rabies to clinical lycanthropy shows an evolving medical gaze. There isn't one correct scientific explanation. The legend is multifaceted and has changed over time. A feedback loop may also exist. Myth influences perception of reality, and misinterpreted medical conditions reinforce myth. A truly scientific approach must accurately define the historical werewolf it seeks to explain, wary of anachronism and modern media's distorting influence. Separating fact from fiction is complex. Understanding how real conditions, environment, psychology, and cultural beliefs interacted to create this enduring monster. While ancient myths laid foundations and medieval trials burned the werewolf into infamy, it was flickering cinema light and modern fiction's printed page that truly forged the archetype we recognize today. The 19th century, with Gothic sensibilities and scientific anxieties, resurrected the werewolf as a potent literary symbol. Then, 20th century Hollywood projected this creature onto the silver screen, codifying attributes and cementing its place as a quintessential monster. This media metamorphosis was not mere retelling. It was reinterpretation, reshaping the beast to reflect new fears, desires, and understandings of losing humanity. The 19th century saw a resurgence of interest in the werewolf within the Gothic genre. Authors, captivated by the supernatural, macabre, and darker human psychology, found it a powerful metaphor. Early examples include Sutherland Menzies' Hughes' The Werewolf, 1838, and Frederick Marryat's The White Wolf of the Harz Mountains, from The Phantom Ship, 1839, featuring an early female werewolf. G.W.M. Reynolds's penny dreadful Wagner the Werewolf, 1847, presented a man making a Faustian bargain for youth and wealth, becoming a werewolf. Alexandre Dumas penned The Wolf Leader, 1857, and Erckmann Chatrian, Hugues le Loup, 1869. These narratives used the werewolf to delve into duality and repression, the animal within, a concept Darwin's theories amplified, lurking beneath civilization's veneer. Transformation was often an unwilling surrender to base instincts. Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1886, while not explicitly werewolf, carries a lycanthropic subtext of unleashing a repressed, savage alter ego. As industrialization altered landscapes and the British wolf faded into memory, some stories expressed nostalgia for a wilder age. The werewolf, a hybrid interacting with human encroachment and diminishing nature, explored this conflict. Clemens Hausmann's novella The Werewolf, 1896, is a haunting example. The beautiful, enigmatic White Fell, a female werewolf, preys on a secluded northern community. She can be seen embodying anxieties around the new woman and changing gender roles, a figure of power and allure, yet profound danger, her dual nature reflecting societal contradictions. The 19th century literary werewolf evolved into a complex symbol of identity, societal upheaval, and humanity's relationship with its primal nature and changing world. If 19th century literature resurrected the werewolf symbolically, 20th century cinema seared its image and attributes into global consciousness. Universal Pictures' Werewolf of London, 1935, was first. Henry Hull as Dr. Wilfred Glendon, a botanist bitten in Tibet while seeking the rare Marifaza lupine lumina flower, introduced unique elements. Glendon's werewolf, Jack Pierce's minimalist makeup, retained human intelligence, even style. The Marifaza offered a temporary antidote, hinting at a scientific dimension. The film explored werewolf rivalry, with Dr. Yogami, Warner Oland, also afflicted. It blended science fiction with horror, establishing tropes like bite-spread curse and possible antidote. However, Universal's 1941 The Wolfman solidified the archetype. Lon Chaney Jr.'s Larry Talbot, an American returning to his ancestral Welsh home, became iconic. Talbot is a tragic figure, an ordinary man cursed after being bitten, trying to save a woman from a wolf. Chaney's performance imbued Talbot with vulnerability and torment. The film and sequels codified werewolf lore. It established silver vulnerability. Talbot is killed by his father with a silver-headed cane. While the original film linked transformation to wolfsbane blooming in autumn, sequels like Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, 1943, explicitly tied it to the full moon. Wolfsbane became integral. Jack Pierce's groundbreaking makeup, yak hair, prosthetic snout, created the definitive cinematic werewolf visual. The Wolfman resonated with its time. Released December 1941, as the US entered World War II, themes of inescapable fate, loss of control, the beast within, and struggle against irrational forces struck a chord. Larry Talbot, Good Man Cursed, could be a metaphor for individuals caught in historical forces beyond control. He was, as one historian noted, a victim of a cruel or indifferent fate in a less comprehensible world. The cinematic werewolf became a barometer of societal anxieties, its transformation reflecting fears of civilization regressing into savagery. Larry Talbot's shadow was long, but the werewolf evolved. Later, 20th and 21st century narratives adapted it to new cultural landscapes. It moved beyond simple monster to complex metaphor for identity, alienation. Adolescent angst found expression in films like I Was a Teenage Werewolf, 1957, Teen Wolf, 1985, and Ginger Snaps, 2000. The latter, a dark allegory for female adolescence, linking lycanthropy to menstruation and societal pressures. Themes of sexuality and queer identity found expression, the werewolf as an outsider whose transformation deviates from heteronormative expectations. Environmental concerns and eco-gothic themes added layers, the werewolf embodying threatened wildness or nature's untamed power. A notable shift is the werewolf pride movement in urban fantasy and paranormal romance. Werewolves are often sympathetic, heroic, or romantic, embracing their dual nature. This often involves domestication, stripping traditional horror for power, community, or romance. This divergence reflects changing views on conformity, identity, and the self. Special effects also impacted portrayal. Visceral transformations in An American Werewolf in London, 1981, and The Howling, 1981, brought graphic realism. This scientification or medicalization continued, making the affliction feel more biological. The werewolf remains an adaptable cultural barometer, its form shifting to embody prevailing fears and preoccupations of each era, a dynamic symbol society reshapes to confront human experience. Centuries have passed since werewolf trial fires cooled, and science has offered plausible, if not definitive, explanations for phenomena once attributed to lycanthropy. Yet the werewolf endures. It prowls our literature, cinema, digital folklore, its howl still capable of raising neck hairs. Why does this ancient creature retain such a potent grip on the modern imagination? The answer lies not in moonlit forests, but in the untamed wilderness of the human psyche, where the werewolf serves as a primal metaphor for our deepest anxieties, fundamental dualities, and eternal fascination with the thin veil between civilization and savagery. At its core, the werewolf embodies human duality, civilized self versus savage instinct, rational mind versus primal urge. Man and beast, a duality that marks my existence, as one reflection puts it. This internal battle, this unsettling awareness of humanity's fragile construct, is a timeless concern, and the werewolf gives it tangible form. This resonates with psychological concepts. The animal within, as Freudian id or Jungian shadow. Werewolf narratives explore the fear and sometimes forbidden allure of unleashing these repressed parts, a cautionary tale of self-control shattering. Moreover, the werewolf is an inherent transgressor, breaching fundamental boundaries: human, animal, life, death, sanity, madness. It is a creature of the liminal, challenging our neat categorizations, our sense of order. Transgression of taboos, cannibalism, unbridled violence, loss of reason is core to its horror. It embodies the threat of chaos if societal dams fail. The legend also serves as a lens on social structures, community definitions, and treatment of outsiders. The Navajo skinwalker, Ye Naldlushi, represents ultimate social horror. Power perverted through destroying kinship bonds. Murdering a relative severs one from community and hojo, harmony, aligning with malevolence. This contrasts with modern narratives where the pack offers belonging for outcasts. The pack dynamic evolved, exploring loyalty, hierarchy, rebellion, and identity within a marginalized group, allegories for subcultures. The werewolf has long symbolized the outsider, misunderstood, feared, living on fringes. Whether cursed, infected, or born different, the lycanthrope embodies being othered, resonating with anyone who has felt alienated. Why, in an age of rationalism, does the werewolf persist? Perhaps it is the enduring power of story itself. Monster myths articulate fears, explore unknowns, grapple with complex emotions. The werewolf, rich in history and psychological resonance, is effective for this cultural work. The legend isn't confined to the past. Whispers of man-wolf creatures surface in modern folklore like Wisconsin's Beast of Bray Road or the German Moorbach monster. These sightings, however anecdotal, show the legend's tenacious grip, its ability to attach to unexplained phenomena. The locus of fear has shifted. Ancient myths and external forces like God's wrath and curses gave way to medieval trials and the devil. Today, our scientific worldview internalizes the werewolf as a stand-in for melancholy, disease, and a fractured mind. Modern narratives largely continue this, exploring internal psychological struggles. Yet the allure of external inexplicable evil or primal power persists. This adaptability allows the werewolf to reflect changing paradigms of threat. Divine judgment, demonic possession, mental collapse, societal oppression. Ultimately, its power lies in resisting easy explanation, embodying the unknown. It's woven from anxieties about our nature, capacity for savagery, our place in a world where human-animal lines seem terrifyingly thin. The werewolf and wildness are contested spaces, reflecting humanity's evolving, fraught relationship with nature and its own untamed aspects. As long as shadows exist, in forests and human hearts, the werewolf will prowl, a timeless symbol of transformation, terror, and the mystery of being human. Our journey has taken us from the sun-drenched groves of ancient Arcadia, where a king's impiety first gave monstrous form to the wolfman, to the icy fjords of the Norse, where warriors embraced the beast's fury. We have walked through the shadowed forests of Slavic folklore and the stark deserts of Navajo tradition, witnessing the werewolf's myriad shapes. We have stood in the grim courthouses of a Europe consumed by fear, where the devil's pact was sealed with fire, and peered into the tentative beginnings of scientific inquiry as physicians and philosophers sought to understand the wolf in the mind and the beast in the body. We have seen its image flicker across cinema screens, its legend constantly reshaped by the anxieties and aspirations of each new generation. Despite centuries of storytelling, persecution, scientific scrutiny, and artistic reinvention, the werewolf retains its primal power to fascinate and unsettle. It is a creature woven from the threads of our deepest fears, of the unknown, of losing control, of the darkness that may lurk within ourselves and our societies. It is a testament to our enduring fascination with the untamed, the transgressive, the terrifyingly other. So, is the werewolf fact or fiction? Perhaps the question itself is a misdirection. For the werewolf's most potent existence may not be in the moonlit forest or the forgotten crypt, but in the untamed landscapes of the human heart, a shadow that lengthens with the fading light of certainty, a howl that echoes in the spaces where reason falters and the ancient, primal world stirs. The moon, it seems, still casts its spell,